The way I see it, it wasn't elves that chased me from my homeland. It was orcs.
It's two sides to every story.
So I read this article on Salon called "Everyone Loves a Villain, but in the Rings of Power, maybe we shouldn't." And it's an interesting article, except some of the things that they bring up I really didn't agree with. So they said, the first thing they said is that really that the Rings of Power tricked us over the season, and that there was really no way of knowing who Sauron really was. So I don't really agree with that premise, because I wasn't fooled one bit for not even like 1 second. From the introduction of Halbrand, had no confusion the whole season. Well, here's a bit of the article. A seemingly mortal man whom Galadriel Morphy Clark encountered floating on a piece of wreckage on the Sundering Seas. Halbrand eventually and rather reluctantly left Numenor at Galadriel's request to join her on her quest to find and stop Well himself. It's really quite funny when you think about it, close quote. The only problem I have with that is the idea just puts it on Galadriel. Maybe some people were tricked by that, but I think most astute viewers were not tricked by that. I think another thing, like they mentioned the whole fake out. The fake out with Gandalf, maybe not Gandalf, that really wasn't a good fake out. And really for me, it only just brought up a bunch more questions as to why they would even do the quote-unquote fake out with the 3 ladies from Rune, because the introduction of the ladies from Rune and then saying that they thought it was Sauron and it wasn't Sauron, it just kind of made those ladies look stupid.
Tulil men noritas, Haru Sauron.
So should we root for bad people? Should we be rooting for anti-heroes? I don't know.
Evil is necessary.
But a lot of the Rings of Power season, truthfully, I was rooting for the orcs, often, and I was rooting for Adar, and that was just mostly because their opposition at times I didn't really fancy. Like, I didn't really like their opposition, and mostly because, just for example, I had a lot of trouble with the Galadriel character for most of the season. So if she was up against a bunch of orcs, I was rooting for the orcs. Now, I knew the orcs weren't going to win, but yeah, I was rooting for the orcs. I think from a more technical side, the quote-unquote bad people were actually the best actors. Adar, magnificent actor. Farazone, excellent actor. Most of the orcs, great actors. Technically, great actors.
You just earned your company a water ration. Don't be afraid.
So another good passage to go through is the following. So, quote, introducing the primary antagonist of one of the most popular and best-known fantasy epics in pop culture as an attractive, conflicted man has now allowed for the possibility that we might never quite view Sauron as the serious evil threat we all know him to be. That just doesn't really make sense, because the story goes that Sauron is a shapeshifter, so why would that be a surprise? So I'm just going to continue with the paragraph. In fact, it might make viewers sympathetic to him. And while it's true, this introduction doesn't deviate too greatly from Tolkien's work, Sauron appeared in disguise as the beautiful elf Anatar, Lord of Gifts, in order to influence the elves and forge the Rings of Power. The only thing I would say that's kind of like a problem, and I'm interjecting into here, is that the Sauron / Galadriel combo could not have happened if Celeborn, her husband, had been in this season. So they do make some good points. Like, for example, they talk about how in society we kind of elevate serial killers a little bit too much, which is a good point, a point taken. The only thing is that Sauron is completely fictional, and we have to remember that.